So thank you very much. Thank you to our last panel, also all of our panelists for their insights. Our next panel discussion involves creative leadership in the C-suite, which is moderated by Floriane de Saint-Pierre, founder and president of FSP Group. Floriane was a great contributor to our event today, which we appreciate very much. Joining Floriane on our panel are Sam Barron, director of the Fabrica design studio, François Chateau, partner at Dentons and our exclusive platinum sponsor for today's event, Marie Gulin-Merle, chief marketing officer from L'Oréal USA, and Gena Smith, senior vice president, human resources, global executive and creative recruitment from LVMH, Moët, Hennessy, Louis Vuitton. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. I am truly delighted to be the moderator of this panel on creative leadership. A topic that is really at the heart, as many of you may know, of my thought process. Louis Vuitton, can you hear me? It's good? Okay. Louis Vuitton, Coco Chanel, Estée Lauder, Steve Jobs, Nathalie Massenet, Mark Zuckerberg, the Instagram founders, all have something in common. They all broke through and created leadership in their field by creating a new, relevant, beautifully designed, high-quality product or service. Not one of them was a creative by training, but all of them were or are perceptual and creative minds. As such, they were able to catalyze society and offered three things that I always see common to any power brand. First, connection with the zeitgeist. I've never seen something that doesn't make life smarter having success. Think about the plane towards the boat to come here from Paris. There are so many examples. The second component is design at the heart. I've never seen an ugly product making a brand sustainable on the long run, and that's good news. And third, impeccable execution. If you look at brands from Apple to Hermès to Vuitton to cosmetics brands that are power brands, they have all these three components. Elsa allowed me to be a little bit provocative, so I will say that the past century said luxury is exclusive, but in fact it massified luxury visibility down to bus stops and subway stations. Indeed, we have entered the final stage of what author and management advisor Joseph Pine is calling in his book, The Experience Economy, from commodities to goods, to services, to experiences, to personal transformations. This century, certainly 21st century, sees luxury as qualitative, immersive, and inclusive experiences. But this century also defines a world that is using data science, as we heard earlier this morning, and programmatic conversation to engage and hopefully rehumanize the relationship. Mark Parker, Nike CEO, said recently, quote, "The changes we are seeing in the world are fast and massive, and so are the opportunities." Nike's market cap, we're just ending the panel on investment, so Nike's market cap is today $106 billion. Yes, opportunities with new paradigms. See now, buy now in fashion. Amazon creating product, and 35% of their consumers' purchase coming from recommendations that are based on algorithms. Kanye West selling tickets to attend his recent fashion show in Madison Square Garden. Big success. Phygital retail. No physical, no digital, phygital retail. Drone deliveries. Smart wearable as the new norm. A world where brands become socially engaged, probably to be provocative with an ideology. They are, or they will become content factories, staging transformative personal experience over physical stuff. How do these new paradigms impact and will impact creative leadership? Who could be better panelists than the ones you have here in front of you today to answer such questions? Gena Smith, SVP Human Resources LVMH in the US. Marie Gulin-Merle, Chief Marketing Officer at the L'Oréal Group for the US. Sam Baron, designer and creative director and head of design of La Fabrica. And François Chateau, partner at Dentons, who advises many creative leaders. But before engaging the conversation with the panelists, I have a few questions for the audience. And in fact, here, we would like to get to know you better. So my first question is, do you consider yourself here a creative leader? And there is no good or wrong answer. You can be very honest. Wonderful. That is wonderful. That is really wonderful news. So I'm so happy because then we will speak the same language. 75. Okay. My second question to better know you is intuition playing a role in your professional life? Once again, oh, that's wonderful. I did not expect it. And please, use your laptop. Don't miss this question. 100%. Oh, 98. Then it proves that it works. My third question to the audience is, who is driving the value creation? The CEO or the creative? That's a very politically interesting answer. Aha. This is good. There will be a lot of debate, I suppose, in the audience. Okay, so now that we get that we know you a little bit more, let's start the conversation with the panelists. Gena, I'm going to start with you. You're heading human resources in the US for LVMH, the #1 group in the luxury sector. LVMH covers a very broad range of product category. Just let me remind, fashion, of course, with leaders of the sector, but also including US-based brands such as Marc Jacobs and Donna Karan and Aden. Beauty and cosmetics, including as well US-based brands such as Fresh and Benefit Cosmetics, watches and jewelry, wines and spirits, hospitality with Cheval Blanc, and interestingly as well, retail, when we think about Sephora and DFS and Le Bon Marché. With such comprehensive spectrum, my first question to you is, what is the role of a creative leader at LVMH?
Well, let me just clarify. Can you hear me? When you say creative leader, are we talking about the CEO or are we talking about the designer? Or
I think it's very important in this century to live with ambiguity.
we have a lot of that
with
at LVMH.
ambiguity. And I think that our industry should work with ambiguity. So I want to answer this question because I think that today, as I said, Steve Jobs is a creative leader. Yves Carcel was a creative leader. You have plenty in the group. There is plenty in this industry. Not necessarily trained designer. So that's why I think it's important to have your views and also on product categories. For example, wines and spirits or retail that are strongly creative driven, however, without a creative director.
Right. Well, I think for us at LVMH, that's certainly one of the key challenges is defining what that looks like within each of our business sectors. And there really isn't sort of one definition of what that represents. It depends on a number of different factors. It depends on the business sector, it depends on the category, it depends on sort of the broader macro issues of what's facing potentially that sector. It depends on what's happening with the brand or the maison at that period. Is the brand in an evolutionary stage? Is it in a transformative stage? What's going on? And I think that when we think about creative leadership, either on the creative director side or on the CEO side, we try not to be really too dogmatic in terms of what does that need to be. So to your point about sort of living it with ambiguity, I mean, for us, we have to take each situation independently and really identify what's needed. So for example, recently when we looked at the transformation of DKNY and we needed to reestablish the leadership team, we really went in with a very open slate. We didn't have definitive view on what we needed either on the creative side or on the CEO side. It was really through a series of conversations with both creative talents and managerial talents to try to understand what their vision also would be for this incredible brand. I mean, we need to also be fed to a certain extent with some external ideas and the vision of professionals in these different categories. So we really look at every situation very independently, and I think frankly it's part of the reason for the success and not being too rigid in how we define these roles. Certainly there are variances when you look at the world of fashion. Maybe it's a little bit more defined in terms of the role of creative leadership, certainly for brands such as Givenchy or Celine, where in that case you have a creative director who really has full creative control over everything related to all touch points with the customer, from the product, everything from the conception of the product, directing all of the different categories, leading all of the design team. You have responsibility for the entire image, so advertising, PR, events. I mean, really sometimes down to what are the napkins that we're going to use at this particular event, looking at every single detail to make sure that it really represents the DNA and the spirit of that brand. And then finally, the ultimate experience, which is the store experience or the e-commerce experience or any of the other social or digital experiences. And then, for example, in those cases, we have a CEO who works with them very closely, and that relationship is key because, of course, it has to be a symbiotic relationship for it to really work. And as you can imagine, it's not easy sometimes to find that. And then, of course, it's very different if you're looking at the world of perfumes and cosmetics or wines and spirits, where we absolutely have creative leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, the creativity and the product really is center in all of our businesses. The construct of how that is put together from a manager and a creative standpoint will be different, but fundamentally that's the core and the center of everything for us across all of our maisons.
Thank you very much, Gena. Let me now have a sorry.
If I just may add
yes, sure.
On backing you up. Having been across the table from LVMH many times in many negotiations with many brands, basically at LVMH they have a great flexibility, and there is a balance because the CEO is going to not to act as strongly if depending of the strengths and the fame of the creative director. I think, this is where the balance is between leadership in the C-suite, between the creative director and the CEO.
Yes, I think that we will.
Been doing, and depending of the brand of your divisions, it changes completely. The CEO is completely in charge. Last week in Paris, another CEO was not at all in charge. It was a creative director, and I think it's fine because, needless to say, if the CEO basically thinks he's a creative mind and he's not, but most often it's the case. There was, of course, exception. If Carcel was certainly one. That leads to a disaster.
Thank you, François, for this mention. Marie, let's have a focus on beauty and cosmetic. You are Chief Marketing Officer for L'Oréal Group in the US, and I understand your role is very much about transformation marketing, even with incubation hubs reporting into you. So in beauty and cosmetics, big groups and big brands face competition from startups. We just heard that in the former panel, who are getting visibility in a minute. What does creative leadership truly mean? Is it about innovation? Is it about creative content? Is it about social empathy? I would like to have your views on this.
Okay. Thanks for the question. I think it's to the point, and it's really relevant with what we've just heard in the financial panel. Actually, the financial panel defined really well the purity of those new brands. So those new, this new generation of brands are bringing something really new to us, which is the access in a minute to mass awareness for a very, very low level of entry through social media that are, for now, not monetized. I'm sure that you've heard great things from our Google friends this morning about that. So it puts the brand building, the brand equity rules a little bit upside down. We've acquired 2 of those brands lately at L'Oréal, NYX and Urban Decay. If I take the example of NYX, brand building, marketing capabilities, the brand equity is really outsourced to the community. And this is really new. It means that there is no creative director, there is no agency, there is no head of brand really owning the content development, the assets. It raises a lot of questions. I'm not sure I'm going to tackle all the answers today. The first point is that it questions creative control, the famous creative control, the napkin example. When you outsource your brand to the community, does it mean that the brand is weaker? Does it mean that you cannot have a strong brand? I was very happy to hear in the panel before that we see really pure brands. And NYX is absolutely a pure brand. If you look at the Instagram page of NYX, you remove the NYX logo and you can see it's NYX. Same for Urban Decay, same for a lot of brands. Some of them are owned by LVMH. It questions also the leadership behaviors in the C-suite. How do you empower your teams? How do you let it go when it comes to control? How do you dialogue with the community? It questions all the rules that we used to have. A brand book. Do we need a brand book in the age of social media? Do we need brand guidelines? I think it's close to what you're saying when you say it's about brand empathy. So you define a brand, dialoguing with the dialogue with the communities, with the influencers, with your own consumers. And this grassroots, bottom-up building creates the new brand. I'm not American, but I follow the political campaign right now, and you can see some grassroots political brands emerging also. So from a marketing standpoint, it's also very similar to those new indie brands, new startups that you were describing.
I think that it's very important what you've just said, because I mean the luxury industry has been built in the past century from top-down authority, and now we are facing. I mean this industry is facing, because the audience is consuming in a very lateral manner, competition from brands that are coming from a down top. So, or from a lateral conversation. So I think this is a very interesting learning. Sam, let me thank you for being here with us today. You flew in specifically for this symposium, so thank you. On your website, this is not what is written on his bio, Sam Barrow & Co. is described as a studio offering creative direction and design consultancy, embracing projects from physical to digital. It also says that you work together with a team of young thinkers, blending all creative skills to deliver a challenging and original vision to your clients. Let me also mention, because he has not mentioned this in his bio, that you received a Silver Cube from NYC Art Director Club and have been integrated as a jury member, and that the AD&D, London-based Creative Association, awarded you with a yellow pencil. You also received the Grand Prix de la Création de la Ville de Paris in the design category, and during the 2010 edition of Maison et Objets, Philippe Starck selected you as one of the 10 important designers of the next decade. So we are in the next decade, and Sam is here with us today. In addition to your own design and creative director practice, you have been the creative director of La Fabrica since 2007, nearly a decade. Sam, we've seen that we may be all creative leaders here, but you are the only one on this panel to be described in first instance as a creative. Therefore, I would like to ask you a very basic, super simple, basic question. What is your work?
Very different from all what I heard this morning and this afternoon. Basically, my job is about, let's say, creating future memories of your clients, your consumer, through the fact that I'm trying to challenge the briefing that you guys propose to us. We try to redefine what are your brands and how we can create specific experience. So it's could be through a product, could be through the launching of a product, could be through the environment or the digital or analog situation that you are trying to face or you are stressing with. And what we retain important is not just to deliver, let's say, one thing, but to really create the context all around the solution that is expected from you. So basically, yeah, it's all about putting together lots of little creative solutions that would create a landscape for you consumers where we can start to engage a true conversation. When I say we, is the brand and the consumers, because for me, I really believe that nowadays it's not just about one more bag, one more pair of shoes, one more clocks, but it's about how you make the people feel and how the people will we get a new memory. Basically, it's all about how they're gonna have a moment with you, and that moment is money, that moment is a product, that moment is, whatever. But it's so unique to have 1 word with someone or 1 second with someone, or I think it's all about what you say, or maybe you call love or creativity or ideas or about time. All these little components together, they need to be designed, and that's what I'm doing.
The idea of creating, memories, and as a design, really motto is really very, very important. François, let's now hear your views, François. And if we think about, we know that you are advising, major creative leaders. We cannot mention the name. If we say AE, CB, or RS, we may understand that it is big players in the industry. If we think about Steve Jobs, Christopher Bailey, who is CCO and CEO, Mark Parker, currently the CEO of Nike, booming company, who started as a footwear designer. If we think about Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, co-founders of Airbnb, or the graduates, lines seem blurring, and that's good news. So my question for you is, what is this difference between a creative leader and a business designer?
Since you said a little earlier that Elsa allowed you to be a little provocative, I didn't dare asking Elsa because she knows me too much and I'm very provocative. So I'm going to be a bit provocative. Rebounding on the slide that you showed, Sam, which was creative accounting. Because being a creative leader is not always great. Creative accounting is a good example, and I would basically cite Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff was a great creative leader, right? But of course it was for the wrong reasons. So point number one. Point number two, the good news is in this room, 75% of us believe that they are creative, which is very good. This morning again, Alex Bollen basically said beyond creativity is everything. There would be no bricks and mortars or digital or America or international trade or anything but for the creative. So then, as you said, this is a very blurring line somewhere, and we have seen let's say 3 types. What I call the Pygmalion, the Pierre Berger, Yves Saint Laurent, Schwartz,
And Calvin.
With Calvin, Donna and her husband, and many others who basically developed great success because they were complementing each other, breathing the same air, but one was the talent as a creative talent, and the other was the business mind. And this is, of course, extremely close teams, and this is unusual, say, in the business. Then the second category is what I call the babysitters. Nothing, it seems pejorative, but it is not, because again, in a company as large, for instance, as LVMH, there is some very good CEO babysitting the young creator who needs a guide, who needs guidance, and this is again a teamwork. But then now, as you said a little earlier, there is what I call the third category, which is the Uber leaders. And this is the Christopher Bailey's, the Angela Ahrens, and the Parker, etc., not only in fashion and pure luxury, but in larger categories such as Apple, for instance, which is made most likely a luxury product, but jury's out, I guess, as far as the definition of what is luxury or not. So, at the end of the day, this is a case-by-case process. This is for the CEO or the recruiter to basically adapt to his or her creative leader. Sometimes the CEO has some creative talent as well and can share it. This is a team, and more it has to be on a team. It has to be defined as a team. Team works, because I think the Uber leaders, there are very few of them. And why? Because of course this is all a matter of left brain and right brain. At the end of the day, so one is a little more developed in some person than the other, and vice versa. So I say we are still this blurring line will continue forever.
Time goes very fast. So Gena, let me reach out to you. You're the heart of talent strategies. Is the luxury industry still attractive for talent in today's environment, dominated by cool, tech, young companies?
Well, based on the amount of emails that I receive inquiring about jobs, I would say that yes, we're not on the verge of demise quite yet. I think that, for example, last year we had over 200,000 people who reached out looking for roles within LVMH. And almost 50% of our overall population, by the way, are millennials. So I think we are still highly attractive as an employer and as an industry. Last week I had this incredible opportunity to visit the Hennessy Maison in Cognac. And we were at a dinner. We had an incredible immersion into this brand, which has, as many of our brands, as all of our brands, a wonderful story and heritage. And at one of the dinners, I had the opportunity to sit next to the new master blender, who is taking over from his uncle, who's been the master blender for 50 years. And prior to that, and remember that Hennessy is 251 years old this year, and prior to his uncle, the other 7 master blenders have all come from the same family. So for the 250 years that Hennessy has been around, it's been created by the master blender, the family of the Filot family, and the Hennessy family. And during the dinner, the new master blender, the 8th, as he's being referred to, asked me what my job is. What do I do at LVMH? And so I told him it's about talent acquisition. And he said, well, actually you and I have the same job. Both of us are responsible for the success of the future for our businesses. I'm doing it on the side of product, and you're on the side of talent. And it's absolutely true. The heart of the business is inextricably linked to people. And you can't disentangle them. So if we're doing everything right to keep our brands relevant and aspirational and desirable by the customer, I think will have the same effect as an employer. It's about maintaining relevance. It's about looking at these incredible heritage brands and ensuring their relevance for the times that we're in, which means being relevant for the way that people are living their lives. And if you look at the slide that I had earlier, you can see that we have brands that have been around since the 16th century. And to tag on to what Alex Bolin said earlier today, I don't think we would be here talking today if we had not been able to continue innovating our brands and ensuring their relevance and ensuring their aspiration. And it's the same thing from an employee standpoint. When we look at, and of course we study this exhaustively, as I'm sure many of you do, when we look at what's important to the millennials, what types of companies do they want to work for, what are they searching for in their employers, frankly, the things that they're mentioning are not necessarily, I want to be at a company that's on the forefront of technology. It's one element and it's important, but they want to work for companies that have brands that they're proud of, that are profitable, that are growing, that offer exciting career opportunities, that are international and global, that provide development opportunities for them and help them understand how to navigate and develop a career within the group. And all of these things are things that are really at the heart of LVMH in particular, and I think they're at the heart of many of our organizations. I mean, we rely on our talents, we rely on our people, and even in our organization alone, I mean, we have a culture of development, we have a culture of mobility, we have a culture of providing with our employees with the best opportunities. And so I believe as we're able to maintain the relevance, the aspiration, the desirability of our products, of our brands, it's going to be a virtuous circle, and it's going to impact us in the right ways from an employee standpoint, and we will continue to be a desirable industry for the millennials or any other generation that is out there experienced. And millennials, I mean, we're always very open and needing all of these great talents in our organizations.
Yes, it's very, very true, and also having strong brands facilitate this. However, working for tech brands and working for the luxury sector, I tend to see also that there is this talent competition with tech brands that is surfacing, but there may be a new battle surfacing. Marie, I would love to have your views on the impact of the globalization of the world on creativity. My question for you is, creative leadership doesn't come from Western countries and Japan anymore, nor from, individuals trained in those countries. So how do you see the impact, namely on beauty, of creative leadership coming from countries such as Korea or from new creative nests around the world?
Another great question. I think we used to define creativity on a map with the paradigm of Western versus Eastern, or another paradigm which was the geographical boundary. So was creativity coming from that country or another country, the US or France, for instance? When it comes to beauty, what I see now are nests, epicenters. So it can be rooted in a country like the US or Korea or Israel, but it's more kind of a zone, which encompasses different parameters to create a cocktail of innovation and creativity. So if I take the example of the West Coast in the US, very inspiring, boiling innovation, a boiling environment for those new brands, those new indie brands and startups. We now operate, L'Oréal operates there. We have 4 brands, Urban Decay, NYX, Baxter of California, and Clarisonic. We have a connected beauty lab, incubator, part of the R&I of the Research and Innovation Department of L'Oréal. We've launched a virtual mirror, Makeup Genius. I don't know if you've seen that app. We've launched a UV patch to detect UVs before you apply sun care. But beyond that, I think that it's not on the West Coast by chance. It's not random at all. I think that those zones have in common to concentrate content, technology, communities, and that new cool culture coming from the tech, that new collaborative, co-energized, crowd-sourced energy coming from there with new rules, I think, for a company, for marketers, for creative leaders, for HR leaders as well. Observing those new nests is I think, is critical to know about the rules of the cool nest and also to use them as catalysts within the organization, and this is what we are doing.
The C-suite, I mean, I'm just reflecting on what you're saying, and it could be the collaborative suite. Sam, as a creative, I will address you this question. How would you describe and what is your relation with the C-suite? It's before your answer, I was just looking at some titles now that we see starting. Of course, Chief Creative Officer, Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Brand Officer, Chief Content Officer. I even bumped into the other day a Chief Philosophy Officer. And I read a chaos manager. And I thought that it was super interesting because it was not a crisis manager, it was a chaos manager. And in fact, the second interesting thing is that he or she was not a chief, he was a manager. So what is your relation with the C-suite or the collaborative suite?
I was a bit surprised with the answer that you guys gave when we started the discussion, in the way that sometimes most of the creative, they are eventually part of the C-suite, but at the end not so much considered like that, because the C is about chief and the management in a, let's say, a classical way, while I truly believe that maybe now, and from what happened this morning, or for example, the kind of the stress we can feel about what is digital, what is not, what is a shop about, etc., that you are all re-questioning things, because that's the time to do so. But basically, I think also maybe what Floriane is trying to ask is about how we can re-question also the position of the creativity into the company. Not just because creativity is about someone that knows how to draw some clothes, some furniture, some experience, some lodging facilities, blah, 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 but it's all about what does it mean to be creative, either because you are really good with number, either because you are good with fine arts, either because you are good with management, with display, with whatever we need for this industry. But the big problem that for me I can see as something to be solved for the future is about we all have to sit on the same table. We are all very specific in our daily activities, but we should have a same long desk where we are all sharing the same, not even values. Everybody has been speaking about values and time this morning, and it became a bit redundant to me, because this is something that is assumed. It's like speaking about the C-suite on this beautiful golden sofa. I think it's, you know, yeah, I mean, if you are here, you are chief. If we are here, we are creative. If we are here, we are all here to have our heart beating because we are believing in what we are doing every day. So let's put things as they are. Let's step back. Let's rethink our situation. Let's rethink how we can work better all together, and having a more linear attitude and more collaborative attitude to be sure that we bring the goal that we all decide together. And sometimes what I feel, just to finish my answer, is that we think we speak the same language, either creative to CEOs, either CEOs to creative, but we don't. We don't because what? Because we never took 2 minutes to be sure that we are defining the same meaning behind some words that we are using every day. And I think that is something that is look very basic and maybe stupid, but I think that is the new rule for the best communication that will bring the best result.
So your point is really about, community and culture, basically, as the two
exactly,
C.
Yeah, the same culture, to be sure that we are really part of the same community, not through Instagram only, but because every day we need to understand each other better and better to be sure that we don't misunderstood anything and that we don't lose one client, that we don't misdesign the experience for the client, because as we said this morning also, they are very volatile. It's super hard to catch them. So how can we all together really share the same feelings? Because if we feel the same, we can make our client feel something similar to what we are feeling.
And with integrity.
Yeah.
François, earlier we got the audience views on the question, who is the driver of value creation, the creative or the brand CEO? And it was more or less a 50-50. As you're advising shareholders and you're advising creatives, what is your view?
I'm a lawyer, I advise shareholders as well. I think that I certainly believe the world is going to one direction, and there will be no value if there is no creativity. The good news for all creative people, and 75% here are allegedly creative people, is that I believe in the next 20, 30 years, starting tomorrow, if an object which is not designed correctly will not sell. So the poor creative people of the past 50 years were making a penny basically on the dollar, when the C-suite or the others were basically benefiting from their work. It's over. I believe you should take as a benchmark compensation these days. The CEO of the benchmark for a CEO's basic compensation for a CEO of a relatively large, say luxury fashion company, let's say $1 million, around $1 million. Of course, you have equity, bonuses, and everything. But for the top creative people, it's going to be 3, 4, 5 million basic. And that is more and more the case. More and more, one is able to get to ask for a very talented, acknowledged, recognized creative person, millions of dollars, including the equities and the awards, going to packages. I'm not going to breach any secret because it's a public information, and because it's a publicly listed company. Christopher Bailey makes about, as a package, about $15 million, 10 million, a little more than 10 million sterling. And he's not unique in this case. The names that, and you know that very well yourself, and you negotiate those packages very well. Those other names, this is a kind of a benchmark basically. And of course, the best is to have this Uber leader, this Christopher Bailey of the world, this Parkers of the world, who can combine in one without having to work too hard, basically, on the chemistry between the CEO and the creative leader. And of course, this is the key. But what better chemistry into one body as opposed to two is to find those Uber leaders. I think there is going to be more and more, because I think as well that from an education standpoint, when you study today creative things, you get as well some business education, and at the end of the day, you have to deliver. If you are in fashion and you do couture, everybody knows couture is not going to make a penny for the company. It's really marketing. But at the end of the day, you have to work with your CEO in order to have a ready-to-wear collection which is going to sell. Otherwise, you are out of business, and the company is out of business as well. So I think it's going in this direction, and I'm pretty confident that it will get better and better in this way.
Gena, I think it's important to have your views on the future. We spoke earlier on 2025, 2030. How do you see the role of a creative leader, especially with the new tech environment? I mean, today brands are producing a product, probably fewer products. However, there will be a visual content, and a content that will be massive, and that will require a lot of creativity, and constantly. So if we look in a few years from now, how do you see the talent that will be suited to head or to contribute to your brands or to brands?
Well, I think we would probably all say it's going to be really tough. I mean, it's not getting easier. As it relates to all of these Uber leaders, I am always in search of them, and it doesn't seem that there are so many of them. I think that there's probably a couple of dimensions, and also just on my last point, I certainly don't want to imply that we're not doing things differently and looking at the way that we work and our culture and our environment to continue to be attractive, again, both on the business side and on the employee and recruitment side. One of my, maybe it is sort of a personal belief, but I think that more and more the role of a creative leader has to be to truly engender cultures where creativity can thrive. Because I think that to some extent, having a creative director who's responsible for so much and has the weight of so much on their shoulders, it seems to be increasingly impossible as a way of working. The world is changing so fast, there's so much more competition out there, and frankly, the customer is so much more educated. I mean, probably 10 years ago, we were really on the leading edge. You didn't have customers that were so aware of brands and designers and stories and what's happening and all of the choices. And those days are really over, and they're not going to come back. I mean, transparency is really one of the big things that we talk about, again, on the business side and on the employee side. I think we need to have everybody within an organization really contributing to the creative vision. And everybody should be able to. I mean, if we have, and we do, 74% of our employees who work in retail, I mean, they are at the front lines. They are the ones that are dealing with the customer, that are interacting with the customer. So what is the feedback? Where is the sort of the upward ability to relay information that can have an impact? I think also one of the things that we have to continue to think about is how do we use data? We're not going to start using data to tell us that we should create more red bags because customers want red bags. That's not what data is for us. Data is really to help us understand the way people are living, what's coming up, what are the trends, and then how do we sort of infuse that, or how do we collaborate with the creative process? How do we combine the two in a way that will help generate more creativity and innovation? But as we always say at LVMH, our brands are heritage brands. We're talking today about heritage brands, but they're not static brands. We have to evolve them, we have to move them. And I think, it's really, again, for me, it's about creating cultures where truly creativity can thrive at all levels of the organization. And I think it's about how do we effectively use data in a way to help open our mind even more.
I think it's really reflecting on Sam's points about the culture and the creative culture that really is the new kind of leadership, is what François and also Marie, I think you were referring on. Marie, with a world today of hundreds of millions of travelers and the digitalization of the world that we've talked about this morning, how do brands strengthen their equity and visibility vis-a-vis an audience of over-informed netizens?
Okay. I see two opposite movements. The first one is those global platforms. So you have a few of them. I think people are using 5 apps in the ton of graveyard of apps that we all have on our phones. Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, let's say for beauty, Twitter. So this is global, and this is massive, and it's both organic and monetized. The second trend that is opposite and a little bit to your point, getting faster and faster, is fragmentation of communities, sub-communities, rooted in super local, hyper local areas. So at the same time, you have to speak global, and you have to talk to those micro grassroots communities. One of the answers for the brands is to go for brand publishing. So this is what we've done at L'Oréal. We've started actually Mark Spikert, who talked earlier today, started acquiring not only brands but a domain name, makeup.com. And we've acquired skincare.com. So we acquire properties that are not product brands properties. It goes into this trend of content or services beyond the product. So makeup.com is now the 5th makeup property here in the US. My team and I just launched skincare.com 2 weeks ago. And beyond the anecdote of what we do at L'Oréal, I think what is super interesting here is these capabilities for brands to talk to very widely, to very large audiences, but at the same time to personalize the content through data. And I fully agree with Gena. The second answer is data. I'm working a lot on programmatic topics, big data, capability building, and marketing people or creative people are asking me, Marie, are we going to get data-driven? What does it mean for us as a head of brand, for instance? I agree with you, it's not about being data-driven, but probably data-informed. And it's a new bundle of art and science in what we do. Asking the right questions to the data. It's not kind of a magic place to go. This is probably the most exciting new frontier that we are dealing with. Data-informed creativity in beauty, but also beyond beauty, for sure.
Yeah, so does it mean that, in fact, reflecting on what you are saying, in fact, it's the end of, in a way, marketing in the way of storytelling? We are entering an area of story making. What is your view on this?
Brand as a publisher becomes a story maker. But again, you have that tension between the top-down storytelling and the bottom-up. So the content can be brand-led. It can also be user-generated. That combination of brand expression coming from the C-suite and brand expression coming from the consumers themselves, and marrying that and aligning that is a whole new game. The content fragmentation is a whole new game. If you have to deal with, I don't know, hundreds of pieces of content to produce every day, again, it raises the question of creative control. When it was a TV commercial and a napkin, I think it was manageable humanly speaking. How do you do that when you deal with thousands of pieces of content every day?
As a lawyer, I would love to have your view on this, François. The fact that brands are becoming like publishing with creative resources, interacting with them, how would you see, what is your view on this?
Well, first, I want to make one comment, I guess, between storytelling and story making. Again, there is some bad, can be a very bad word, story making. But I guess in the story making, it has to be authentic. The authenticity has to be, because otherwise the new consumer is going to reject the story. So I assume you are using your, to answer Floriane's question, you are using what you receive from your consumers, and which is basically public information. This is public information or fair use if you go into copyright. And I don't think there is any issue there. At the end of the day, this is repackaged or redone by L'Oréal, and L'Oréal is going to produce and to own basically this content. But I don't see any legal issue there.
We are nearly at the end of our panel, and I will ask our last question to Sam. But I think that this idea from creative leadership to creative accountability and creative culture is definitely a key topics that we have learned today. Sam, you're the creative, and you mentioned, you started your conversation earlier on mentioning memories. So I would like to ask you the question, what would you like the audience today to memorize from our panel?
but I would just like to add something that I think that in terms of creative direction, there is also a redefinition on the role itself, where you were saying that, with all the content-based culture of we cannot just choose a napkin anymore and do the TV commercial. I think it's also because if we, as creative, ask our CEOs and C-suite members to share the same values as us and really try to have the same language altogether, it means that we as creative has to do the same with our teams too. So I think it's not anymore about the creative director to be the diva in the ivory tower and he's the only one that took the decision. I think it's more and more about to be a team driver and inspire a full team of people that are sharing exactly the same vision, because they completely understand what is the vision of the creative director. And in that case, you can have a perfect content chief, whatever. Everybody can be using his own creative skill, but all of them, again, sharing the same language, so going on the same direction. And all this multiplication of creativity levels everywhere can be assumed perfectly in terms of one vision. Then maybe a nice idea to check if you are still awake is...
We are.
So I'm going to ask everybody to close his eyes, just 1 second.
Or more.
Or more. And think about an amazing memory. So that's it. That was a unique moment. It was a time sharing. It was the best souvenir you can have of this day.
To conclude this panel, let me share with you 3 thoughts from creative leaders. We spoke about human beings all through this day and how to rehumanize the relationship we are building, each one of us. This reminded me what Estée Lauder said. She said earlier on when she started her brand, she was telling the culture in the company, tell a phone, tell a graph, tell a woman. And I think it's very relevant today. Really, this one-on-one relationship, I think, is very relevant. My second thought was from Jean de Loisy. Jean de Loisy is the president of the Palais de Tokyo. We didn't have the chance today to speak about art, but I think that art is a very important tool to understand what is happening. He describes creatives and artists as the lights of a car, les phares d'une voiture. When it's night, they see in advance. It's so true that creatives see in advance. The third, I learned from that to watch subcultures and crowd cultures, as every major movement that has impacted our industry comes from creative leaders from the edges of society. Finally, the third thought comes from Robert Tiemann, who is the creative leader who founded renowned Frame magazine, and I encourage you to read this every, month or 2 months. And he's concluding in his editor's letters this month, quote, "What we need the talent of the future to do above all is to give technology form and meaning." And I think that also it reflects to the former panel about investment, and I think that technology and tech device will play a big role into what we are going to do, giving form to them and meaning. On the occasion of this first luxury symposium, let's all make a common commitment, at least a wish. Let's stop the repeat mode. Let's embrace the opportunities the 21st century offers, and let's all be, all here, all around us, seriously ahead. Thank you. Thank you.